Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin wa salatu wa salamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin. Amma ba'd. Inna Allaha wa malaikatahu yusalluna ala an-nabi ya ayyuhalladhina amanu sallu alayhi wa sallimu taslima. Allahumma salli ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammadin wa barik wa salli alayhi. As-salatu was-salamu alayka ya sayyidi ya RasoolAllah wa ala alika wa ashabika ya sayyidi ya habiballah. Continuing from our next lesson of the famous book which we are studying, Al-Haq of Mufti Ahmad Yaar Nae'emi rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi. May Allah have mercy upon him.
Ameen.
This famous book written upon the Aqeeda of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jamaat, and in particular in the difa and the defense of these Aqeeda. And in our third lecture and the third chapter which Mufti Sahib mentions and writes about in his work is the chapter of Ilm Ul Ghaib, which is the knowledge of the unseen, the knowledge of Ghaib, the knowledge of unseen. This is the next chapter which Mufti Sahib rahmatullahi alayhi mentions and speaks about and in detail expresses that what is the belief and the creed, the doctrine of the Ahlul Sunnah in relation to this concept of Ilm Ul Ghaib, and what stance do the Ahlul Sunnah have, because we understand that when this work was written, during that time and prior to that time was when this fitna arose, and there were certain people who denied the knowledge of RasoolAllah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and not only denied the unseen knowledge, but tried to lower the rank and status of the knowledge of RasoolAllah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Therefore, it was necessary for such a work to be written where such a chapter and topic was highlighted. Hence, Mufti Sahib rahmatullahi alayhi, they wrote in detail about this topic. Now, Ilm Ul Ghaib and knowledge of the unseen, first they begin the chapter by mentioning that what is the definition of Ghaib, of that which is unseen, what is regarded as unseen. And though sometimes there could be something which may not be able to be seen, but that is still not unseen. Something, because what the common understanding may be that something which cannot be seen from the eyes, that will be unseen. No, this is not the actual definition and what is meant by something which is unseen. For example, some things you can taste, but you cannot see. Some things can be smelled, but cannot be seen. Some things can be heard, but they cannot be seen. That does not mean that all of these things which cannot be seen from the eye are unseen. No. And the first thing which Mufti Sahib mentioned is that unseen is that which cannot be determined from any of a person's senses. So eyesight, smelling, tasting, touching, hearing. Meaning something maybe behind this wall, I cannot see it, but I can hear it. Therefore, it's not unseen to me. It's there. I know it is there. Something maybe I can taste, for example, like oxygen or carbon dioxide. We cannot see that, but we are assured that via an experiment we can know that this is here. It exists. Hence, that cannot be unseen. Unseen is that which cannot be determined from a person's five senses, his hawase khamsa. His five senses cannot determine and distinguish that thing, that whether it is knowledge or whatever it is, and that's where it becomes unseen. And then that ghaib is divided into two. And in Tafsir Kabir, which the Hawala which they give, and Tafsir Kabir written by Imam Fakhruddin Razi rahmatullah alayhi, who is one of the Imam and the Imams of the Mufassirin, in their famous work Tafsir Kabir, they mention that what is the definition of ghaib, that knowledge which is unseen. And they mention قول جمهور المفسرين أن الغيب هو الذي يكون غائبا عن الحاسد ثم هذا ينقسم إلى عليه دليل وإلى ما لا دليل عليه. That according to the majority of the Mufassirin, those who have written the exegesis of the Holy Quran, the definition of ghaib is that which is cannot be determined by the five senses which I mentioned, is hidden. And then they state that summa haza yanqasimu, this is divided into two types. Ghaib is divided into two types. The first is that ila ma alayhi dalilun wa ila ma la dalilun alayhi. First is that type of unseen for which there is evidence that it exists. Then that is that type of ghaib for which there is no dalil, there is no evidence or no barahin, no proof. And the example which is for this to make you understand would be that, for example, now Allah is unseen, Allah is ghaib, malaika, the angels are unseen, paradise, Jannah, Bahisht and Jahannam, hellfire, this is unseen to us. But there is evidence in the Quran and Hadith from the verses that Allah, the angels, paradise, they exist. So though it is ghaib, but evidence is there that they exist. Just like that Yawm al-Qiyamah, that the day of judgment will come, that is unseen, but evidence is written that it will come. But at the same time, that ghaib which is without a dalil, an example of that would be day of judgment as well. How? That when will the day of judgment come? The fact that it will come, it is assured from evidence. But when it will come, there is no evidence. Nowhere it is written that on this day, this time, this date, the day of judgment will come. Signs are given. It is told that it will be on a Friday, it will be in the month of Muharram, etc., etc. But the actual date is unknown. So it is ghaib, and without a dalil also, there is no proof to establish that on this day, the day of judgment will arise. So hence, the ghaib is of two types. One, that which is bound upon a dalil, evidence, and that which is not upon a dalil, both. And when you have those who deny the Ilm Ul Ghaib of RasoolAllah, them things which are not upon a dalil, that ghaib which is not distinguished upon a dalil, they claim that this knowledge is only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For example, when will the day of judgment be? Whether a mother will give birth to a son or daughter, what child? What will be the weather? Who will die, where, when, etc. These ulum khamsa, what they call, that they state these are only with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And these are the mafatih al-ghaib, the keys of the unseen and the treasures of the unseen which are only with Allah and no one else. And then there are those who completely deny that Rasulullah had no unseen knowledge at all, to the extent that we have them like Ismail Henry who wrote that Rasulullah did not even know what was behind his back or what was behind the wall. He did not even have knowledge of that. So now we will come into further that what unseen knowledge did Rasulullah have, how it is proven that Rasulullah had this knowledge and in what form. And these two divisions that I mentioned to you, that the ghaib, which is ila ma alayhi dalilun and wa ila ma la dalilun alayhi, that these both forms of ghaib, that Rasulullah did he possess these or not? That will be the next thing which Mufti Sahib mentioned. Before we dwell further, Mufti Sahib rahmatullah alayhi mentioned that what is the view of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jamaat in relation to the knowledge of Rasulullah and the Ilm Ul Ghaib. So they mention that the first thing which they mention is that the first belief of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jamaat is that alim bizzat, meaning that knowledge which is self-possessive. There's type of knowledge which is given. Then that is that knowledge which is possessed without it being given. That is known as alim bizzat. And that is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the first belief, that every other creation of Allah who has knowledge, whether it be small or a lot, it has been given by Allah. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge has not been given. He has always and will always possess that knowledge. This is the first belief of the Ahlul Sunnah. The second belief is that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and the Anbiya Kiram, the other prophets of Allah, have been given knowledge of the unseen. How much? That's a separate issue. But they have been given ulum of the ghaib, ulum al-ghaibiyya, has been given to them by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And number 3, that out of all of Allah's creation, remember these 3 points. The first, Allah is alim bi zat. Number 2, Allah has given knowledge of the unseen to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Anbiya alayhim salam. And number 3, out of all of Allah's creation, which included are the malaika, the angels, the Anbiya, awliya, every creation of Allah, out of all of Allah's creation, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been given the most knowledge by Allah. These 3 points here, Mufti Sahib has outlined first, and they mention that these 3 points and beliefs are amongst the zururiyat of deen, meaning them things which are the necessities in religion, them core parts of deen, that denial of any one of them will lead to kufr. To deny any one of them will lead to kufr. So if anybody believes that Allah's knowledge has been given to Allah, that person, he comes out of the fold of Islam. If anybody believes that he himself or any of Allah's creation has possessed knowledge from himself without it being given, he has done kufr. If somebody believes that Allah's Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the other Anbiya, prophets of Allah, they have not been given no unseen knowledge, he has come out of the fold of Islam. And if anybody believes that another form of creation has more knowledge than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then he has come out of the fold of Islam. This is why you see that there were certain amongst the Diyabana that when they wrote certain extracts, that the shaitan, Iblis and the angel of death have more knowledge than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Their knowledge is more wasi, more wide than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hence the different fatwa jat are placed upon them from the ulama of Haramain and Allah Hazratullah alayhi. For this reason, because to believe that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has more knowledge than the whole of creation is amongst the zururiyat and the necessities of religion. The first 3 points Mufti Sahib mentioned in relation to what the belief of the Ahlul Sunnah should be. The next point they mentioned that the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have been given knowledge of the unseen either from Allah bil wasta or bila wasta, or from the Anbiya. So I mean this includes the Sahaba Kiram, the Ahlul Bayt, the awliya who come after, that they have been given certain knowledge of unseen which they possessed also during their lifetime. And then they mention that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been given knowledge about the 5 ulum khamsa, the 5 forms of knowledge which I mentioned to you earlier, that in the Day of Judgment, etc., etc., that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has been given the knowledge, the juziyat, knowledge of them 5 types of knowledge by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If somebody denies these 2 points, then he has not denied the zuriyat of deen, but these 2 points are the zuriyat of the Ahlul Sunnah. That if he denies this, he becomes a muqtadi', he becomes an innovator, and he is out of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jamaat. If he denies this, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not have knowledge. Now, I'm not mentioning complete knowledge here. You realize the word kull, which I'm saying, I'm not mentioning kull here. Because about ilmi ghaib kulli, that's the next point. This is here to have of juz'iyat, that Rasulullah did possess knowledge of these 5 things. How much? That's different. But he did possess. And the awliya and other of Allah's creation, the ashab, etc., that they were also given ghaib, the knowledge of the unseen, partially to all of them. To deny this, a person becomes an innovator. Then they mention further few points that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had the knowledge of when the Day of Judgment will occur. That when will be the Day of Judgment, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was aware of this. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was aware and had knowledge of everything which occurred before him and everything that will occur after him until the Day of Judgment, hatta ke that he had knowledge of what was on the lawh and the mahfuz. The lawh mahfuz, which is the preserved tablet, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had the knowledge of that also. And like this, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the Quran, every verse in the Quran, they fall into different categories. And amongst the categories they fall into are either muhkam or the mutashabihat. that there are them verses of the Quran which are muhkam, which are clear. That when you read the verse, you understand straight away that this is the meaning of this verse is this. Then there are certain verses which the Quran states as well, minhum mutashabihat, that there are certain verses in the Quran, from amongst them they are mutashabih, meaning they are ambiguous. You have to do ta'wil to understand what is the meaning of this verse. And sometimes the meanings are hidden from the person. But you must have this belief that Rasulullah knows in detail of all the muhkamat and mutashabihat of the Quran. That whatever was revealed upon him, to us, it could be different. That's when you see ulama on a certain verse, they will have different opinion, the mufassirin. They are upon them verses which are mutashabih. Or you could put them in the category of sari and kinaya, or muhkam and mutashabih. These are terms of usul, that them verses which are muhkam, clear, all the ulama, they have ittifaq upon the opinion. Those which are mutashabih, ambiguous, you see the mufassirin, they have different opinion. Like you see, for example, an easy understanding of you will be general meaning, that the verse of the Quran which you hear in relation to the wudu, that all you who believe إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ. That all you who believe that when you intend to establish prayer, then what should you do? فَاغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ, wash your face, and then wash your hands. First wash your hands up to the elbows, and then your face, and then your وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, your head, and وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ, and then your feet to your ankles. Now here the ulama differ. According to the Ahnaf, al-mirfaqan wal-ka'ban tadkhulani fi fard al-ghusl inda ulama'una thalasa wa khilaf li-zufr wa shafi'i. This is in Quturi is mentioned that according to the ulama, our ulama, indana, meaning according to the Ahnaf, the mirfaqan and ka'ban, your elbows and your ankles, are included in the faraid of ghusl, to wash them. Meaning ghusl, meaning wudu here. But this is against Imam Shafi'i. Imam Shafi'i states that ila means up to. Imam Abu Hanifa means ila means including. So now there's difference of opinion on this verse of the Quran. So what the real meaning of this, whether ila means up to or including, for Rasulullah there was no need for him to differ of opinion. He knew what the exact meaning was. So for the ummah, this is the difference now, that for the nation there can be ikhtilaf in a verse, but for Rasulullah everything is clear. There is nothing hidden or ambiguous for him. To have this belief is a core. And to have this belief also is something that if a person completely denies, then he becomes an innovator also. He becomes what they call a bad madhab. That he becomes somebody who has innovated and he has become gumrah. He has become lost in his path. So hence it is core for us to have these beliefs in relation to ghaib and the knowledge of Rasulullah according to these parts. So Mufti Sahib firstly mentions about the background of Ilm Ul Ghaib, what is the ta'rif, what is the definition, the ma'ana, then what do we believe that what knowledge Rasulullah possess. Now they give the evidence that we believe that Rasulullah had knowledge of the unseen, and the Anbiya have this knowledge also, and Allah gives this knowledge. So then what is the proof of this? So obviously the first proof comes from the Quran, and Mufti Sahib, throughout the whole book, he makes a pattern. Every topic which Mufti Sahib mentioned, last month when we did Taqleed, you saw that as well, that first Mufti Sahib, they mentioned the definition, etc., etc. Then they give evidence from the Quran, then they give evidence from Hadith, then they give the aqwal of the ashab and the fuqaha and the aimaideen, the ulama of the past. Then they give the aqwal of those who deny, that even when their own scholars have accepted it. And then in the end they mention about the i'tirazat, that those people who deny and refute, how to give answer to them. That's the pattern. So here as well Mufti Sahib begin that Ilm Ul Ghaib, what is the evidence from the Quran that Rasulullah had the knowledge of the unseen. So they begin from there. So the first verse that which they present in evidence for the fact that Rasulullah and the Anbiya have this knowledge is from this verse of the Quran. وَعَلَّمَ آدَمَ الْأَسْمَاءَ كُلَّهَا. وَعَلَّمَ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught who? Adam alayhi salam. Asma'a kullaha. He taught Adam alayhi salam the names of everything. Asma is the jam'a of ism. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allama taught Adam alayhi salam the names of every single thing. Then thumma aradahum alal malaika. Then he presented Adam alayhi salam to the angels. This is the verse of the Quran. That in Surah Baqarah, that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He created Adam alayhi salam, before his creation, he did mashwara with the angels. He said, I'm planning to create a man. What is your opinion? And the angels said that they will do fasad and they will do bloodshed, etc. The mankind. Then Allah said, I know what you do not know. Then Allah created Adam alayhi salam. And then He taught him the names of everything. And then He said to the angels, now look at what I have created. He presented Adam alayhi salam to the angels. And in this verse here, Asma'a kullaha, because kul means everything. This is, everything is taken into this, and the rule is that when any verse or any part in the Arabic language, that when something has been mentioned definitively, like here now, kul means everything. In order for something to be exempt from this, there has to be some sort of istisna. And then that becomes mustasna from there. For example, if somebody was to say that I have the knowledge of everything in this room, now that means now that every single thing from that wall to that wall was inside, I have the knowledge of that. And now if I was to say no, or somebody was to say no, he does not have knowledge of this, then I have to exempt something like what? I have knowledge of everything in this room apart from what's behind that wall, or what's on this side, or what's on that. So I have to use like illa or walakin, something which makes istisna and makes it exempt from here. So when Allah is saying asma'a kullaha, there is no istisna in this. Meaning everything that there was to have a name, Allah taught that to Adam alayhi salam. This is the verse of the Quran, the usul of the Quran. Now the mufassirin, they have given their opinion that what is referred to as what knowledge and names did Adam alayhi salam have. Because now for us to understand the Quran, we have to look into what the mufassirin, those who have written exegesis of the Quran, that what they have written in relation to this. And in Tafsir Madarik, which is the qawl of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu, who is Imam al-Mufassirin of Aman, who Rasulullah himself appointed as a Mufassir of the Quran. What do they mention? That what names did Allah teach Adam alayhi salam, and how much did He teach? I'm only going to give two calls. There's many who have mentioned about 15 here, but I will mention two. One is of this, and one is of Imam Fakhruddin Razi rahmatullah alayhi in Tafsir Kabir. They mention وَمَعْنَا تَعْلِيمِهِ أَسْمَاءَ الْمُسَمَّيَاتِ أَنَّهُ تَعَالَى أَرَاهُ الْأَجْنَاسَ الَّتِي خَلَقَهَا وَعَلَّمَهُ أَنْ هَذَا اسْمُهُ فَرَسٌ وَهَذَا اسْمُهُ بَعِيرٌ وَهَذَا اسْمُهُ كَذَا وَعَنْ ابْنِ عَبَّاسٍ عَلَّمَهُ اسْمَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ حَتَّى الْقَصْعَةَ وَالْغَرْفَةَ. Subhanallah. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He taught Adam alayhi salam the names of everything, what did He do? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in front of Adam alayhi salam, somebody may say that at that time certain things did not exist that exist now. So did Adam alayhi salam know the knowledge of what's happening now? The names, that this is called a camera, or these are called glasses, because these do not exist then. But what does the Mufassirin say, Abdullah ibn Abbas state, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in front of Adam alayhi salam showed all of creation that will come, and said this is a horse. The example they give you, a faras, that this is the horse, this is a camel, even to the extent that Allah in front of Adam alayhi salam bought houses and rooms and said this is called a house, this is called a room, this is called so and so, this is called so and so, up till that every single name of every object until the day of judgment was shown and taught to Adam alayhi salam. So now you can see that every single object that will have a name, because word is asma, that everything which will have any sort of definition, name, was taught to Adam alayhi salam. Then Imam Fakhruddin Razi rahmatullah alayhi in Tafsir Kabir, what do they mention? Subhanallah. That now one is about names, and another question can rise here, And the answer from this is given by Imam Razi. This is why I chose this one. قوله أي علمه صفات الأشياء ونعوتها وهو المشهور أن المراد أسماء كل شيء من خلق من الأجناس المحدثات من جميع اللغات المختلفة التي يتكلم به ولد آدم اليوم من العربية والفارسية والرومية وغيرها. And the question can rise that in Arabic, for example, Bait is house, but house in English is house, in Urdu is kamra, in another language is something else. So then in what language was Adam alayhi salam taught that this is a house? Imam Razi mentioned that Hazrat Adam alayhi salam was taught by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala every single name of every object in every single language until the day of judgment. That every single language, whether, and they mentioned the three examples they give here, is يَتَكَلَّمُ بِهِ وَلَدُ آدَمُ الْيَوْمَ مِنَ الْعَرَبِيَّةِ وَالْفَارَسِيَّةِ وَالرُّومِيَّةِ, in Arabic, in Persian, in Latin, because they were the common language at the time. Latin is the old language, Persian and Arabic. That even here in England where we live, Latin was originally the language which was spoken here, Roman what we call. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught Adam alayhi salam every language. And Qazi Ayaz rahmatullah alayhi, in Ash-Shifa bi Tarif al-Huquq al-Mustafa, which I have with me here also, they mention that Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam, he was taught 8 million different languages. 8 million languages were taught to Adam alayhi salam by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in every language he was told that this is this, this is this, this is this. This was the knowledge now which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave to who? Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. Now, what the point here, somebody may ask that we are talking about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, why is Adam alayhi salam being mentioned? Because Adam alayhi salam is the first Nabi to be zahir on earth. But what does the Mufassirin further on, Shaykh Muhyiddin ibn Arabi, also known as Shaykh al-Akbar, they mention in Futuhat al-Makkiyya, and also this is mentioned by Qazi Ayaz rahmatullah alayhi, Imam Khafaji in Nasim Riyad, and other ulama have written in relation to this point here, this verse, after explaining the knowledge of Adam alayhi salam, what do they mention? That awwala na'ibin qala lahu sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wa khalifatuhu Adam alayhi salam. That out of all of Allah's creation, mankind, the first na'ib meaning that you have the main person, na'ib is his deputy. The word deputy you can use, that his deputy, and Khalifa also means deputy or his somebody who has been given successorship, etc. That the first deputy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on this earth was Adam alayhi salam. That Adam alayhi salam, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was, when was he a prophet? Kuntu nabiyyan wa Adama bain al-ma'i wa teen. That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, kuntu, I was nabiyyan, I was a nabi. When was I a nabi? Wa Adama bain al-ma'i wa teen wa Adama bain al-ruhi wal jasad. That this waw that comes here, kuntu nabiyyan wa, this waw is haliyah. That this waw means that I was a nabi at that time when, that's what this waw means here. That kuntu nabiyyan, I was a nabi at that time when Adam alayhi salam was yet between mud and clay and water, or between body and soul. So Rasulullah was a nabi from before, but out of all of Rasulullah's, the anbiya which came, the first one who was sent as a deputy of Rasulullah on this earth was Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. So Mufti Sahib rahmatullah alayhi mentioned that if Rasulullah's deputy, and because we are approaching the night of Mi'raj, the Muqtadi of Rasulullah, Muqtadi means those who pray behind the Imam, who do Aqeeda, that on the night of Mi'raj, Asra, Rasulullah led the prayer, and Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam was his Muqtadi. So if this is the knowledge of the Muqtadi of Rasulullah, what will be the knowledge of the Imam? When the person who reads behind the Imam, his knowledge is such. Normally what happens is that according to fiqh, the fuqaha, what they give the ranking of who can lead the prayer, first is the most knowledgeable, he leads the prayer. Then the most pious, etc. Different ranks come of who can lead the prayer, who can't. Unless you give another person an opportunity that's different. But normally the ranking would be this. For example, if 10 people are somewhere and you think, okay, now we have to lead prayer. Okay, how should we determine who should lead the prayer? Okay, let's look first who is the most knowledgeable amongst you? Okay, so and so is okay, he gets to lead. If, for example, everyone is round about the same, then you go down more and more and more, eventually till you come to whoever it is, and then they lead the prayer. Now here, when on the night of Mi'raj, Asra, because Mi'raj began after this, so Asra we should say, that when Asra took place, and when Rasulullah went to Masjid al-Aqsa, and this time last year, I was in Masjid al-Aqsa myself, and I was actually, it was one night before the night of Mi'raj, this time, that Maghrib, after Maghrib, the night was to begin, and it was after Asr. So exactly this time last year, I was actually sitting at that place where Rasulullah led the prayer after Anbiya. And then after the night when we began, then we went and we took part in the Jalsa which they had there in Palestine. That when Rasulullah led the Jamaat, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this usul, the most superior will lead the prayer. And when Rasulullah led the prayer, if his muqtadi who did iqtida had so much knowledge, then what would be the knowledge of Rasulullah? Then this also, we ask the people who deny that nobody can have knowledge of the unseen, that this is only Adam alayhi salam. So if he was to deny, it is impossible to deny. That's from this point we get that believing that the Anbiya have knowledge of the unseen is from amongst the Zuriyat of Deen. Why? Because it is proven from the Nas of the Quran. Further on, Mufti Sahib gave nearly 26 verses from the Quran. I will not mention all 26 because then the night of Mi'raj would be here in this dars. But just briefly I'll mention a few verses to you that where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran has mentioned about granting unseen, the knowledge of it, to his Anbiya. The next verse which they mention, Mufti Sahib, verse number 5 here, according to what they have selected, they mention the verse, وَمَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لِيُطْلِعَكُمْ عَلَى الْغَيْبِ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, وَمَا كَانَ, it is against the shan of Allah, the greatness of Allah, to do ittila, to inform عَلَى الْغَيْبِ, about the unseen. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not make somebody muttali', He does not inform them about the unseen. Allah does not do that. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهِ, this is the next part of the verse now. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَجْتَبِي مِنْ رُسُلِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ, which was mentioned to you, the usul in the first ayat, that when something is mentioned, in order for something to be taken out of the previous rule, there has to be istisna, exemption, what we call exemption. Here it is stated, the verse, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not inform about His unseen knowledge to anyone. Anyone. So if you stop the verse there, you would say Allah does not give unseen knowledge to anyone. Allah says, walakin. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from amongst His prophets, from His Rasuls, from His messengers, yajtabi, whoever Allah chooses from amongst His messengers, He grants them the knowledge of the unseen. Again, the Nas of the Quran, that وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ يَجْتَبِي مِنْ رُسُلِهِ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. Rusul here is the Jama of Rasul, that Rusulihi, from His Rasuls, from His messengers, whoever Allah chooses, yajtabi, meaning, you know, here the word mujtaba, the chosen one. That whoever Allah chooses from His messengers, He gives them that knowledge. Now amongst all of Allah's Rasuls, they are all yajtabi, they are all chosen. But who is mujtaba is Mustafa. That amongst all His chosen Rasuls, who is the most chosen, who is the most chosen, who is Mujtaba, who is Mustafa, who is Murtaza, that is Rasulullah. So meaning that whoever Allah chooses from His messengers, He gives them knowledge of the unseen. Who He chooses more, He gives them more knowledge of the unseen. And then who He chooses the most, He gives them the most knowledge of the unseen. And out of Allah's Rasuls, who Allah has chosen the most is Rasulullah. Hence He granted him the most knowledge of the unseen. So this is again from the Quran, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned, that how He chooses from His messengers and grants them the knowledge of the unseen. Then here, this now two verses are mentioned, one about Adam alayhi salam, one about Rusul in general. That when somebody denies, we say to someone, for example now, those, the Najdis or whoever they are, who deny about Ilm Ul Ghaib, that how can it be given to the Prophets, etc. We say to them that leave Rasulullah and his knowledge, that's for later on. That's after, because they are Imam al-Anbiya. First, let's speak on whether knowledge of unseen can be given to anybody or not. So then we mention the example of Adam alayhi salam. Look at Mufti Sahib how he's made the tarkeeb. that first he mentioned Adam alayhi salam to tell the people that you are questioning Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, but look at the knowledge of Adam alayhi salam. Then he's mentioned Rusulihi man yasha, generally, that all messengers, Allah is stating that all his messengers who he chooses, he grants them knowledge of the unseen. So that is all the messengers. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is Imam of all the messengers. Then they mention this verse of the Quran. وَعَلَّمَكَ مَا لَمْ تَكُنْ تَعْلَمُ وَكَانَ فَضْلُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْكَ عَظِيمًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran mentions وَعَلَّمَكَ. Now this is directly to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. First is Adam, then Rasul in general. Now this is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam directly. Allah is speaking and Mukhatib is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he is saying to him وَعَلَّمَكَ مَا لَمْ تَكُنْ تَعْلَمُ. That وَعَلَّمَكَ and Allamaka, we taught you. This ka is zamir wahid, meaning it is a personal pronoun used in for the first person. First person, meaning when you have third person, then we say he or etc. And then one is when is you, I and you. That is when you're speaking to one another. Here Allah is stating wa allamaka, we taught you, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What did we teach you? What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teach you? Ma lam takun ta'lam. Everything which you did not know, Allah taught you, Ya Rasulullah. Now, a person can think here, okay, what is the meaning of ghaib in here? Where does ghaib come here? Ma lam takun ta'lam. This ma here. What problem is that, these, when people who deny such concepts, reason for this is because they do not dwell into the Quran. Now, in the Quran, a person, before he can study the Quran, he has to go into the usul and understand first the sciences of the Quran before he can even study the Quran. Because they do not, and it's not their fault that they don't as well. Because why? All the ulama who have written upon such topics are all from the Ahlul Sunnah. So according to them, they were all mushriks. So that's why they are forced that they cannot study from them, or they cannot study from their books. Here is stating وَعَلَّمَكَ مَا. Now this ma letter which comes, this is ma is known for umumiyya, which is for am. In the usul of the Quran, you have certain words or letters which are khas and certain which are am. Khas and am. Khas are those which are specific. Those things which are specific. Like for example, and then that is divided into three parts. Takhsisul jins, takhsisul naw, and takhsisul fard. That's three types of khas. Then you have am, umumiyya, which is in general. For example, when anything is being given a ta'rif of, spoken about, either it is mentioned in khas or am. For example, if I say this is in takhsisul jins, for example, we say this is a human being. So now we know that this person here, this object, is nothing else apart from a human. So he cannot be an angel, he cannot be a jinn, he is a human. That's takhsisul no. Then you have takhsisul jinn, sorry. And then you have takhsisul no. No meaning type. Is he a male or a woman? Male or female? You say this person here, he is a male. That means he cannot be female. Khas, he is only a male. Then you have takhsisul fard, meaning individual definition. We say this person, he is Zaid. That means he is Zaid, he cannot be anybody else. He is Zaid. Or he is Umar, or he is Bakr, whatever he is. His name is that is what he is. That's khas. Then am is when you speak generally. For example, Muslimin, the Muslims. Now this is general. Every person who is Muslim, he comes into that category. There's no specification. Which Muslim? For Pakistan, male, female, Muslim, he's in there. Jinns are in this, everyone, humans, everyone is Muslim in there. Or Mushrikeen, whoever does shirk, he comes into that category, is am. Just like this, in letter wise, the two examples which are given are man and ma. So for example, I say, whoever is in this room, he is a Muslim, for example. Now in this room, I've not made nothing specific, I've said whoever. So every person who is in this room, he comes into that category. And if I say whatever is in this room is mine, for example, say whatever is in this room is mine. So that means that every single thing which is inside this room is mine. Nothing can be taken out. Whatever is in there is mine. Now here when Allah is stating that we have taught you whatever you did not know, meaning everything that there is to be taught, Allah taught His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This was the reason for me to make you understand what ma. For example, in the Quran, Allah said, example, Sabbaha lillahi ma fi samawati wa ma fil ard. That praises Allah. Sabbaha lillah. Everything praises for Allah. Ma fi samawati wa ma fil ard. That whatever is in the earth and whatever is in the skies praises Allah. Now, can anybody take anything out of the earth and sky and say this does not praise Allah? You cannot do that. Why? Whatever is in the earth, whatever is in the sky praises Allah. Just like that, Allah is stating, whatever you did not know, we taught you, Ya Rasulullah. So meaning everything that there was to be taught was taught to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And here the example which has been given, that Imam Razi mentions, that what is this? وَعَلَّمَكَ مَا لَمْ تَكُنْ تَعْلَمْ أَيْ مِنَ الْأَحْكَامِ وَالْغَيْبِ. That Ya Rasulullah, we taught you everything of the ahkam, meaning of the rules and regulations, and everything of the knowledge of the unseen was taught to you, Ya Rasulullah. So meaning this again now means that Allah taught ka to you, and ma lam, ma is ma, that whatever there was to be taught, Allah taught you, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Further on, next verse, which verse number 9, which Mufti Sahib mentioned here, verse number 8 and 9, both are relevant to this point here. That they mention that what nazzalna alayka al-kitaba tibyanan likulli shay. That again here, this is Zamir Wahid, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses to Rasulullah. Wa nazzalna, and we have revealed alayka, upon you, Ya Rasulullah. What have we revealed upon you? Kitab, al-kitab, the book. That same Zalikal Kitab, that same Al-Kitab, we have revealed upon you, Ya Rasulullah. And which Kitab? Tibyanan likulli shay. That book which you have revealed upon you, Ya Rasulullah, that in which it has the bayan and the knowledge of everything. The word kul here is again meaning that Quran from Alhamdulillah to Wan Nas, this has the knowledge of everything. And other verses mention wala ratbin wala yabisin illa fi kitabin mubin. That everything which is dry and not dry, is the knowledge of this is in the Quran. Meaning the bayan, the knowledge of everything is in the book of the Quran. And Allah is stating that, Ya Rasulullah, this book which has the knowledge of everything in there, we have revealed upon your heart, Ya Rasulullah. So this in itself, those people who have missed in the eyes, they should understand the Quran. Okay, for us the Quran, we cannot understand all knowledge. Because there are darajat. Because why? Our Ustad can only teach us to his level. And the Ustad has a limit on his knowledge. So therefore, he can only teach to his limit. He studied from his Ustad, and his Ustad could only teach him according to his limit. Because why? His knowledge is mahdud, it is limited. But here Allah is stating that Ya Rasulullah, Allamaka wa nazzalna alayka. That Ya Rasulullah, I Allah taught you. And Allah's knowledge is la mahdud. It has no limit. That meaning what Rasulullah was taught, that is also la mahdud. That meaning Allah Azza wa Jal, who himself has no limit, his knowledge has no limit. So all that which is in the Quran of everything, the bayan of everything, was taught and revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So from the Quran itself we can see that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in relation to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his knowledge of the unseen. Then the Mufti Sahib mentioned the next verse, and these are the last two verses that I'll mention before I go into the ahadith. That they mention again that فَلَا يُظْهِرُ عَلَى غَيْبِهِ أَحَدًا إِلَّا مَنِ ارْتَضَى مِنْ رَسُولٍ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala فَلَا يُظْهِرُ عَلَى غَيْبِهِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala فَلَا يُظْهِرُ. Allah does not make zahir. Allah does not expose. Allah does not open up ala ghaybihi, upon his knowledge of unseen, or upon his unseen. This ghaybihi, this ha here refers to Allah. Because when the zamir comes after, this zamir refers to what comes before. Fala yusiru ala ghaybihi, meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not expose or open up upon anyone his unseen, Allah's unseen. So here the verse, if it ended, that would be an end, finished. But illa comes for istisna again, except. Allah does not open up His unseen to anyone, ahada, any one of you, illa except manirtada min Rasul, that accept who Allah chooses. Irtida means, when we hear the word murtaza, murtaza means the chosen, irtada means to choose, has the same meaning as ijtiba and istifa, meaning Mustafa, Mujtaba, Murtaza is irtida, ijtiba, istifa. That meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not open up His knowledge of unseen to any one of you except to who? Amongst His chosen messengers. That whom Allah chooses from amongst His messengers, from His Rasul, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants them the knowledge of the unseen. So here Allah is stating that I do not open my knowledge of unseen to anyone. That's right. But be aware, my chosen messengers, whoever I choose, I grant them the knowledge of the unseen. And now amongst all of Allah's messengers and amongst all of Allah's creation, who is Murtaza and Mujtaba and Mustafa, who Allah has chosen, is RasoolAllah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hence Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, without denial, granted RasoolAllah sallallahu alaihi wasallam the izhar of ghaibihi, of His unseen. Allah granted and exposed His unseen to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this again mentions that point, and Imam Razi gives his tashri'at on this, but because time is finishing very quickly, that I will just mention the verse to you, and now the final verse of this chapter here, verse number 16, that where Mufti Sahib 17, sorry, وَمَا هُوَ عَلَى الْغَيْبِ بِدَانِينَ, that when the kuffar would come to ask Rasulullah about questions, or when the Sahaba or anyone would come about Allah, paradise, heaven, etc., and this is all unseen, and Allah stated in the Quran to Rasulullah, go tell the people, وَمَا هُوَ عَلَى الْغَيْبِ بِدَانِينَ, that this ma is for nafi here, that he is not, he ma huwa, and he is not upon ghaib, meaning Rasulullah upon giving the knowledge of the unseen, bidaneen, is not stingy. Daneen means bakhil, to be stingy. That Rasulullah in exposing the knowledge of the unseen is not stingy. Now, when somebody does not have something, he cannot be generous or he cannot be stingy, because he does not have nothing to give. And that person can only be generous when he has something to give. Meaning Allah is stating that my beloved has the knowledge of the unseen and he does not keep it to himself, but whatever you ask him, he will inform you also. The Quran is stating this. So hence here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is mentioning also about Rasulullah's knowledge of the unseen and how he would be generous in exposing and passing this knowledge on. So now there I roughly mentioned to you about 8 odd verses of the Quran, 8 to 10 verses of the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned from the Quran, which Mufti Sahib has mentioned, that Rasulullah has been granted knowledge of the unseen, ghaib, the word has come ghaib many times then, and that is very clear. Nobody can deny that. Nobody can deny that Rasulullah was not given knowledge of the unseen. He might just that his own lack of knowledge and his own ignorance, but the Quran has clearly mentioned Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives, and He has mentioned them. Now the chapter with Mufti Sahib, the bab which he has mentioned here, about them ahadith, them narrations from the books of the kutub of ahadith in relation to proving the knowledge of the unseen of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The first mention, the chapter which they mention, is from Sahih Bukhari and the book of Bad al-Khalq, the beginning of creation. Kitab al-Bad al-Khalq, the book of the beginning of creation, about what took place, etc., etc. In that chapter, the hadith was Sahih of Imam Bukhari. And Imam Bukhari, we are all aware that what rank, reason for us, the usul is clear, a hadith which is Sahih, whether it is in Bukhari, whether it is in Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, whether it is in Imam Bayhaqi's Sunan, or whatever else may be, or the Imam Darimi's Sunan, if it is Sahih, it is Sahih. But to make the other people understand who have missed in the eyes, we mentioned Bukhari, Muslim, etc. in particular. So Mufti Sahib rahmatullah alayhi mentioned Sahih Bukhari also, from Sahih Bukhari, in the chapter of the beginning of creation, that what took place, Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu is the narrator of this hadith, that قام فينا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم مقاما فأخبرنا عن بدء الخلق حتى دخل أهل الجنة منازلهم وأهل النار منازلهم ذلك حفظ من حفظه ونسيه من نسيه. Sayyidina Umar radiyallahu anhu mentions that Qama Fina Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu was amongst us, and he stood up amongst us. He stood up amongst us, and what did he do? After Fajr Salah, he stood. So he prayed Fajr Salah, and the Sahaba Ikram were there. Rasulullah stood up, went down to his minbar, his blessed pulpit, and he began to talk about the beginning of creation. And he spoke, spoke, and spoke until Salatul Zuhr. Then Rasulullah he got off his minbar sharif, Fasalla Salatul Zuhr, he prayed his Salatul Zuhr, then he stood up again and began to speak until Asr. Then he prayed his Asr, then he again stood up and began to preach until Gharabat al-Shams, until the sun set. And what did Rasulullah tell us? Sayyidina Umar radiallahu states that Rasulullah told us every single thing from the beginning of creation until the names of them people and their abode in paradise, and those who will go to the hellfire. Meaning every single thing from the beginning of creation until the halat and waqi'at of what will happen in the hellfire and paradise. Rasulullah presented all this in front of us. Sayyid Bukhari. Now, to Rasulullah, obviously what took place was unseen. What will come is unseen also. But for Rasulullah, that was not unseen. He mentioned everything. Whatever there was to mention, he mentioned. Now another point comes here. When people go to paradise or hellfire, will they go before the day of judgment or after the day of judgment? They'll go after, won't they? They won't go before, they'll go after. Now when Rasulullah here is stating hatta, until dakhala ahlul jannati wa manazilahum wa ahlul nari wa manazilahum, that those who will enter into Jannah and their palaces in Jannah, and those who will enter into Jahannam, hellfire, and their abodes in the hellfire. So meaning Rasulullah here mentioned that even the day of judgment came and went past. And Rasulullah went past that into paradise and hell as well, and informed everything to the Sahaba Ikram. But Sayyidina Umar mentions in the next point that ذَلِكَ حَفِظَ مَنْ حَفِظَهُ وَنَسِيَهُ مَنْ نَسِيَهُ, that amongst us whoever could remember what they could, they remembered. And amongst us who forgot, we forgot. Meaning everybody could not remember everything, but Sayyidina Umar stated that what we had to remember, we remembered. The Rasulullah mentioned everything to them. Sahih of Imam Bukhari. Further on, the same hadith is mentioned again, that in the chapter of Mu'jizat, that فَأَخْبَرْنَا بِمَا هُوَ قَائِنٌ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ فَأَلَمُنَا أَحْفَظُنَا, that Rasulullah فَأَخْبَرْنَا informed us بِمَا هُوَ قَائِنٌ, that everything that took place and will take place إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ, until the day of judgment. Rasulullah mentioned all of this to us. Then further on in Sahih Bukhari and in Sahih Muslim, the same relation comes there also. Again, 3-4 times is mentioned amongst them. So then it is mentioned again in Sahih Muslim. Now this night when Rasulullah went on the night of Asra and Mi'raj, at the end I'm going to mention that did Rasulullah see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or not. But here now the point that when Rasulullah went on the night of Mi'raj, when he had the vision of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the hadith states that what did Rasulullah say? رَأَيْتُ رَبِّي عَزَّ وَجَلَّ فِي أَحْسَنِ السُّورَةِ فَوَضَعَ كَفَّهُ بَيْنَ كَتَفَيَّ فَوَجَدْتُ بَرْدَهَا بَيْنَ ثَدَيَيَّ فَعَلِمْتُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَمَا فِي الْأَرْضِ. That Rasulullah states that what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? Subhanallah. This is not something for you to imagine, because we cannot imagine, but something for you to just in your mind perceive and just take lazat from this. That what Rasulullah is mentioning, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed the hand of his qudra. Because Allah, when we say yadullah, hand of Allah, does not form hand like us. Ma'azallah, astaghfirullah. You have people like these, people who deny Ilm Ul Ghaib, they believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a hand like mine and yours, and when they do tashbih and they explain, they say finger, he has a finger, he has a hand. No, we do not do this. We say the hand of his majesty, of his might, Allah's qudra. What did Rasulullah state? That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala فَوَدَعَ قَفَّهُ بَيْنَ كَتْفَيَّ. Katfayya meaning the, your shoulders, the shoulder blades, the place in between your back, spine, in between the two shoulders. Rasulullah states, Ra'aytu Rabbi, I saw my Lord fi ahsani suratin, in the best way. I saw my Lord. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala placed the hand of His Qudra, the hand of His Majesty, between my shoulders. Allah placed the hand of His might, power, between my shoulders, and what happened as a result? When Sayyidina Musa alayhi salam saw one glimpse, the mountain shattered. Musa alayhi salam became unconscious. Here Allah's hand of power, all on the back of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What Rasulullah states? وَفَوَجَدْتُ بَرْدَهَا بَيْنَ السَّدْيَيَّ. Sad is here, your chest. And بَيْنَ السَّدْيَيَّ means بَيْنَ means between here, this point here, at the front. And قَطْفِيَّ means between the shoulders, back. And Rasulullah said, Allah placed the hand of His power on my back, and I felt coolness in my chest.
Subhanallah.
Hand of Allah, His Qudra on the back of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and coolness in the chest of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then what happened? فَعَلِمْتُ, and one verse, one hadith comes, وَعَرَفْتُ. Araftu means I was informed, alimtu means I was taught. And here the word alimtu is mentioned, وَعَلِمْتُ مَا فِي السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. When my coolness come into my chest, then at that time I was given the knowledge of everything in the earth and skies. Everything in the earth, everything in the skies, that became open up to me when Allah placed the hand of His power on my back. This is the hadith Sahih Muslim, which is mentioned. And then also it is mentioned by Imam Zarqani Charam Wahib, again from the Sihah of Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam states that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the whole earth to me. I see the whole universe like I see the palm of my hand. Like I see the palm of my hand, and I have seen the east, I have seen the west, etc. All this was in front of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now one hadith, two hadiths we want to mention, and then we will three hadiths, sorry, I will mention, then we will finish from them. That from the in relation to the chapter of the hadith which Mufti Sahib mentioned. That we have this point here that some people about Rasulullah and his knowledge, we have the past, the present and the future. Now this hadith here from the Sahih of Imam Bukhari shows the unseen knowledge of Rasulullah of the past, the present and the future all in one. It is mentioned here by Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhuma in Sahih Bukhari, and in the chapter of Isbatul Azabul Qabr, about the chapter of the punishment of the grave. مر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم بقبرين يعذبان فقال إنهما يعذبان وما يعذبان في قبير أما أحدهما فكان لا يستنزه من البول وأما الآخر فكان يمشي بالنميمة ثم أخذ جرادة رطبة فشقها بنصفين ثم عرض في كل قبر واحدة وقال لعله أن يخفف عنهما ما لم يبسها. That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam marra Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam bi qabraini, that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was walking with his companions and he went by two graves. He walked past qabrain, two graves. Yu'adhiban, and them two graves, them people were being punished in their grave. They were being punished in their grave. Faqala, and Rasulullah said, إِنَّهُمَا يُعَذِّبَانِ مَا يُعَذِّبَانِ فِي قَبِيرٍ أَمَّا أَحَدُهُمَا فَقَالَ لَا يَسْتَنْزِهُ مِنَ الْبَوْلِ. One of them is being punished because he would not take care when he would use the toilet. Meaning when a person goes to the toilet, at that time if you do not take care when urinating etc. about the purity of your body and your clothes, this is a sin. And this person was being punished in his grave because he did not take care whilst he used to use the toilet. And the second, وَأَمَّا الْآخَرُ فَقَانَ يَمْشِ بِالنَّمِيمَةِ. The other used to do namima. Namima means what we call a chugli, stirring, causing trouble, hearing from one thing, going taking there, and backbiting, and etc. etc. This was known as, this person used to do this. Hence he was being punished in his grave. Then what happened? Then Rasulullah ﷺ took a branch from a tree. He took a branch from a tree and he broke it in two parts, half, two parts. and he placed one on one grave and he placed the other in the other grave. And then he said that وَقَالَ لَعَلَّهُ أَن يَخَفَّفَ عَنْهُمَا, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will lessen the punishment of these two people until these branches remain there in the grave, dry in the grave. Now, point comes from here, Ilm Ul Ghaib. Firstly, what is inside the grave, nobody can see. So you know a body is in there, but whether that person is being punished or whether he is getting reward, no one can know that. Can anybody today say that I know that this person in his grave, he is in good or bad? So the awliya, ashab is different, but general person, we go to graveyard all the time, what do we do? Pray for them. Allah maghfir li hayyina wa mayyitina. We pray for them, we do not know what is inside them, what state they are in. Here Rasulullah is walking past the grave and he can tell that these two people in their grave, they are being punished. They are being punished in their grave. They are not being rewarded, they are being punished. So this is the first part, that at that present time, Rasulullah had the knowledge of the unseen of what was inside the grave. Then, that's one part. What's the next part? Why they are being punished, that obviously happened before. That happened past, before. What is now in the grave, that is present. Why they are punished is in the past. And Rasulullah is stating that the reason why they are punished, I know that reason also. And they are mentioning the reason for their punishment. This means Rasulullah had the knowledge of the past also. Then Rasulullah placed the branches there and said, now the punishment will become less from now on. I mean, this is in the future, that now it will become less from now on. Meaning here this one hadith shows Rasulullah's knowledge of the unseen presently, the past and the future also. One hadith, Sahih Bukhari, that how Rasulullah was aware of the knowledge of the unseen here. Then further on, again in the Sahih of Imam Bukhari, it is mentioned in Kitab al-I'tisam bil Kitab al-Sunnah, and it is also mentioned Tafsir Khazin, that where Rasulullah once قام على المنبر فذكر الساعة وذكر أن بين يديها أمور إزاما ثم قال ما من رجل أحب أن يسأل عن شيء فليسألوا عنه فوالله لا تسألوني عن شيء إلا أخبرتكم ما دمت في مقامي. Subhanallah. Rasulullah was stood upon his blessed minbar, his blessed pulpit. He stood up and he said to the people, he began to inform them about the day of judgment. Then Rasulullah's rahmah, his mercy, became in Josh, and he said to them that I swear by Allah that amongst you, if any one of you want to ask me anything, ask me and I shall inform you. Subhanallah. Whatever you want to ask me, there is no pabandi, there is no limit on any certain topic. For example, when we go on TV, I go myself, we first say, only according to the topic, ask the question. Because that is what we are speaking about. But Rasulullah here is stating, anything you want to ask me about, ask me, I will tell you. Then what happened? فَقَامَ رَجُلٌ, then a man stood up. A man stood up from the crowd. And فَقَالَ أَيْنَ مُدْخَلِي, then Ya Rasulullah, O Prophet, inform me, where will be my end? Where will I enter? Where is my madkhal? Where will I enter? And Rasulullah said, وَقَالَ النَّارِ, you will enter into the hellfire. He was a hypocrite. Rasulullah knew that this person is a hypocrite. He said, you will enter into the hellfire. The first question rises here, that one man stands up, he asks his question, how can Rasulullah have knowledge of this if you do not have unseen knowledge? That where this person will end up, meaning that Rasulullah was aware that every single person who came on this earth, whether he will enter hell or heaven, that was known to Rasulullah also. That you will enter into the nar. Then a man stood up, فَقَامَ Abdullah, فَقَالَ مَنْ أَبِي, a man stood up whose name was Abdullah, and he said, Ya Rasulullah, he goes, who is my father? Meaning that I was born, but I do not know who my father is. Inform to me who my father is. فَقَالَ Rasulullah أَبُوكَ Huzafa, that your father's name is Huzafa. Meaning you are Abdullah bin Huzafa. That is your name from now on. Your father's name was this. Summa kasara an yakula saluni, saluni, saluni. And then after this, Rasulullah carried on saying, ask me what you want, ask me what you want, ask me what you want. So meaning this person here, he was born many years ago. He was not aware who his father was. But Rasulullah told him that I am even aware who your father is. This is your father's name. This is whose son you are. This is whose son you are. This is your father. And then ask me what you want, ask me what you want. Meaning, here 2 points are mentioned here. One Rasulullah is saying that you will enter into the hellfire. Meaning, what will happen in the future, Rasulullah was aware of. And here asking who my father was. Meaning, what happened in the past, Rasulullah was aware of that also. Both past and future are mentioned in this hadith, the Sahih of Imam Bukhari. Then, finally, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, two were mentioned together, that in Sahih Muslim, so all the hadiths I've mentioned to you till now are either from Sahih Bukhari or Sahih Muslim, both Sahih hand only. Then is mentioned in Sahih Muslim in Kitab al-Jihad, and in relation to Ghazwa Badr, related by Sayyidina Anas radiyallahu ta'ala anhu, who was a khadim of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Anas bin Malik, who was also one of the ustad of Imam Abu Hanifa radiyallahu anhu, that when the night before the battle of Badr, Ghazwa Badr, the first major battle of Islam, Alhamdulillah, I've been to that place where the battle of Badr took place, and there is a place called Masjid Uraish, where Rasulullah made dua for the people of Badr, and then the Jabal Malaika, the mountain where the angels descended to help the Muslims in the battle of Badr. Rasulullah was with his companions, and what happened? قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم هذا مسرع فلان يصنع يده على الأرض ها هنا ها هنا. The Rasulullah went with his companions to the battlefield of Badr. This is one day before the battle, and with his hand he marked on the floor that so and so person will die here. So and so Sahabi will become Shaheed here, and so Mushrik or Kafir, he will die here. And so the marked X or whatever you want to call it, he put a mark there and he said so and so person will die here. This was done. Then what happened? وَقَالَ وَاللَّهِ فَمَا مَاتَ أَحَدُهُمَا أَنْ مَوْضِئِ يَدِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم. Sayyidina Anas states the following day when the battle finished and when we went to collect the bodies, 14 Sahaba Ikram passed away in the battle of Badr. Ghaliban 6 Muhajirin and 8 Ansar. They passed away in the battle of Badr, who were made Shaheed. And also the Kuffar were killed as well, and afterwards they were thrown into the well, which is behind Masjid Uraish. And Sayyidina Anas states, by Allah, the following day when we went to pick up the bodies, underneath every body was the mark which Rasulullah Sahih Bukhari. Now this here, I mentioned to you about Qiyamah, I mentioned to you this now, where a person will die, who will die, when he will die. What can be questioned after this? That Rasulullah before the person's demise, under every single person's body he placed the mark that people will question my knowledge. I will tell you not only who will die, not when they will die, but I will also tell you where they will die. So who, when, where was all told by Rasulullah by placing a mark there that this is where they will die. Now look for yourself that how Rasulullah had this knowledge and where he showed it in this maqam here. And just like this, finally, again in the Sahih Muslim and Bukhari as well, in the Kitab al-Fitan of the chapter and the book in relation to the trials and tribulations which will come close to the day of judgment. Rasulullah was mentioning about the descent of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, that when Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam will return back to earth. And then he mentioned that Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam will have an army. He will have an army who will be with him in the battle. And one of the Sahaba Ikram stood up and said, Ya Rasulullah, he goes, do you know who them people will be in his army? Because generally he asked the question. Rasulullah became in Jilal and they said, Inni la'arifu asma'ahum wa asma'a abaihim wa alwana khuyulihim khairul fawarisa aw min khairil fawarisa ala zahr al-ard. And you ask me that do I know who they will be? He said, Wallahi, I sitting in Madinah Munawwara can inform you about the names of them people who will be in the army of Isa alayhi salam. But inni araftu asma'ihim wa asma' abaihim. But I will tell you the names of the fathers of them people who will be in his army. Wa alwana khuyulihim. And I will also tell you the colors of the horses that they will be sitting on. Not only their names, but their fathers' names and the colors of the horses. And as well, they will be the best horses on earth. Khair al-fawaris, the best horses. Ala dhahr al-ard. The best horses on earth, they will be sitting on them. But I, Muhammad in Madinah Munawwara, can inform to you the colors of the horses also. Look at the maqam of the knowledge of Rasulullah. Some people question today that this shows to you how Rasulullah, how much knowledge he possessed and was given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not for us to limit or say how much, etc., etc. But everything is there present. Now the question, some itirazat mentioned that in the verses of the Quran which they use, that no one can have the knowledge of the unseen except Allah, etc., etc. Now these verses, because time is less, wherever there is a verse in the Quran where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned that nobody possesses the knowledge of the unseen except for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is correct. But this is why I mentioned to you in the first chapter that ilm bizzat is only Allah. Meaning nobody has complete and self-possessed knowledge other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even Rasulullah does not have. Meaning Allah's knowledge is la mahdud. Allah's knowledge is something which does not have no beginning. Rasulullah's knowledge does have a beginning. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's knowledge will never have an end. Rasulullah's knowledge can have an end if Allah wishes. Rasulullah's knowledge has a limit to where Allah wishes it to be. But Allah's knowledge has no limit. Allah's knowledge cannot be fana. Rasulullah's can be fana, and the whole of creations can be if Allah wishes. Hence, the point is clear that whenever in the Quran Allah refers to Himself as Ilm Ul Ghaib, that means that of all complete unseen, that's why when we say Rasulullah is Ilm Ul Ghaib, we cannot say to Rasulullah he is Alim Ul Ghaib. This word cannot be used to Rasulullah. Because Alim means the knower Al Ghaib. This Alif Lam is for istighraq, meaning of all knowledge, all unseen knowledge. This we cannot do upon Rasulullah. Because why? Alim Ul Ghaib is khas with Allah, meaning all knowledge in its totality is with Allah alone. But whom He wishes to give to, He gives. And who He has given the most to is Rasulullah. So in the verse of the Quran, wherever you see this, that it comes there. And then also, two itiraz which are common, which they mention. That if Rasulullah knowledge of unseen, why did this happen? One which they mention is that in relation to Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, that once Rasulullah and Sayyidah Aisha and the Sahaba were traveling through the desert, and the chain of Sayyidah Aisha, her necklace, got lost in the desert. And then the Sahaba Ikram began to look for it. They spent hours, and eventually they found it underneath the camel. What the Najdi say is that if Rasulullah had knowledge of the unseen, why couldn't he say that the necklace is there? You say that Rasulullah had knowledge of Qiyamah and etc., etc. Why couldn't he say that the necklace is there? And they would have found it. Now for these people who use this excuse, the answer is something which is beautiful. Everything has wisdom. Allah and His Rasul chose for wisdom to take place. How? That in the same waqiyah which they do not study, that what happened? The Sahaba Ikram, they spent time looking for the necklace. Eventually the time of Zuhr came. Zuhr time was about to pass, and there was no water in the desert. And then what did Allah do? Allah revealed the verse of the Quran about the Yammam. Subhanallah. He said when water is not available, do the Yammam. So Allah and His Rasul chose to be silent, that let this waqiyah take place, because as a result of this, Allah will reveal the verses of the Yammam in the Quran. Subhanallah. This is why the delay was done deliberately by Rasulullah. So meaning until the day of judgment, whenever a person does the Yammam, he must thank the necklace of Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha. That if that hadn't got lost there, then the Yammam verse would not have been revealed then. But this was the wisdom which Allah and Rasulullah chose, and that's why the delay took place, and Rasulullah did not mention straight away. And just like this, the second one they mentioned about Sayyidah Aisha again, that if Rasulullah had knowledge of unseen, when Sayyidah Aisha came once with, and the accusation was made upon Sayyidah Aisha, an illegal accusation, the ayat ifk, which we hear, that Sayyidah Aisha Mazallah, she did something unjust and illegal with somebody. And Rasulullah for many days, he remained silent. He did not speak in her defense. He did not speak in her defense. And then afterwards Allah mentioned in the Quran about Sayyidah Aisha and her purity. So what they use is that if Rasulullah had knowledge of the unseen, why couldn't he clear the issue straight away and say, no, my wife Aisha is pure. This is the allegation against her. Why did he have to wait for so many days? Again, what they don't understand is hikmat in this. If Rasulullah himself said that my wife Aisha is pure, people could have said that they are bound to say that that is his wife. He was due to say that is his wife. But Rasulullah remained silent. He did not speak. Why? By Rasulullah remaining silent, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed 18 verses in the Quran in praise of Sayyidina Aisha. That he mentioned the question, my wife Aisha, I remain silent and I leave it to Allah to clear the purity of Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha. So if Rasulullah had spoken, it would be different. So Rasulullah remained silent. As a result, 18 verses in the Quran were revealed in the praise of Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha. So this again is reasoning why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam remained silent upon this issue and waited for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to speak on this issue instead. Now, the next point which I'll mention in the last 10 minutes before we pray Maghrib Salah, that because now out of all of Ghaib, all the Ghayub unseen that there is, the greatest Ghaib Ul Ghaib is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the greatest of all unseen. What we believe is, like Allah has mentions, that what unseen can be hidden from you, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when Allah was not hidden from you. Meaning with his own eyes, he saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Mi'raj has approached and Isra. That did Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Did he see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And as a result, if he saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then there is no unseen left from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This will end the argument. So what happens then is denial is done. Denial is done that this waqia of Mi'raj took place, which the Quran speaks about also in Surah Najm, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted his vision to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which I mentioned as Ra'aytu Rabbi fi ahsani suratin, I mentioned from Sahih Muslim, that the Messenger of Allah also my Lord in the best way. Now they use a hadith from Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha, that Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha states that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam on the night of Mi'raj, he did not leave his bed. He remained close to me on his bed. So this raises the question which they use, that this means that Rasulullah's Mi'raj was not physical, but it was either a dream or it was spiritual. It was either a dream or it was spiritual. It could not have been physical, because Sayyida Aisha states that he was next to her on the bed and did not move from there. So how could it be true? With me I have here Madarij al-Nubuwah of Shaykh Abdul Haq Muhaddis Dehlvi alayhi rahmah. It's a very old book on Seerah, upon the life of Rasulullah and Hadith as well, and it's a very old copy that I have as well. It's falling apart as you can see. That here Shaykh Abdul Haq rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhi, they give the answer to this. And I'll mention to you briefly. They mention that Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha, she came to the house of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and got married when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in Medina Munawwara. Was in Medina Munawwara. Mi'raj took place 1 year before migration, whilst Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in Makkah Mu'azzama. So that Mi'raj which Rasulullah, Sayyida Aisha is speaking about, cannot be this one which the Quran is speaking about, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not married to Sayyida Aisha, or Sayyida Aisha was not in his house even when this Mi'raj took place. So then, what was it referring to? So they mentioned that Sayyidina Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam during his lifetime, he had 36 Mi'raj. 36 Mi'raj. 35 of them were either spiritual or a dream, and one was physical. And they state that the Mi'raj which Sayyida Aisha is speaking about is a spiritual Mi'raj, and the Mi'raj which the Quran is speaking about is a physical Mi'raj. And this is the physical Mi'raj of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So Sayyida Aisha's argument there is out. The second of Sayyida Aisha which they use, that Sayyida Aisha states, and Qazi Iyaz al-Shifa with me here, that Sayyida Aisha radiallahu anha, she mentions that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not see his Lord. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not see his Lord. Hence, they use this argument that when Sayyida Aisha has said that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not see his Lord, then why are we debating in this issue? Qazi Iyaz rahmatullahi alayhi al-Shifa, they mention that it is an argument And I mentioned ثم اختلف السلف والعلماء هل كان إسراؤه بروحه أو جسده أو على ثلاثة أقوال. That there is difference of opinion amongst the ashab that whether Rasulullah's Mi'raj, whether he saw his Lord or not, whether it was physical or spiritual. Then they mentioned that Sayyidah Aisha had this opinion that Rasulullah did not see his Lord. And she uses the verse of the Quran that nobody can do idrak of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is correct. But then they mentioned in return, they state, okay, Sayyidah Aisha states this, why do you only use Sayyidah Aisha's qawl? Do you leave the other ashab? And then they mentioned this. Them companions who are more superior than Sayyidah Aisha, remember Sayyidah Aisha was only young when Rasulullah left this world, and most of her knowledge came after. A lot of it came after. But them ashab who were Jaleel Qadr in the time of Rasulullah, they mentioned amongst them companions, subhanallah, that who had this view, that they mentioned وَذَهَبَ مُعَظَمُ السَّلَفِ وَالْمُسْلِمِينَ إِلَىٰ أَنَّهُ إِسْرَاءُ بِالْجَسَدِ وَفِي يَقْظَةِ وَهَذَا هُوَ الْحَقُّ وَهُوَ قَوْلُ Ibn Abbas. They mentioned that the opinion of the majority of the predecessors is that the Isra bil Jasad was done with body, Jasad. And fi yaqzati, it was whilst Rasulullah was awake, not asleep, awake. وَهُوَ الْحَقُّ وَهُوَ قَوْلُ Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu وَجَابِرٍ وَأَنَسِ ibn Malik وَحُزَيْفَةَ وعمر بن الخطاب وأبي هريرة ومالك بن سعسعة وأبي حبة البدري وابن مسعود والضحاك والسعيد بن جبير وقتادة وابن مسيب وابن شهاب وابن زيد وحسن المجتبى وإبراهيم ومسروق والمجاهد والإكرمة وابن جريج وهو دليل القول عائشة وهو قول الطبري وابن حنبل وهو إسراء بجسد النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Now I mentioned to you nearly 20 Sahaba Ikram, amongst whom Sayyidina Anas radiallahu anhu, Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, Sayyidina Huzaifa, and Huzaifa was one of the companions who was the Hamraz. He was who used to hear the secrets of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And he is stating that maybe you do not know, but I was told that this was a physical miraj of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Then they state, not only them, Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, who is one of the Aimah Muhaddiseen, then Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu, then Imam Hassan, Sibt Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the line goes on and on of them companions who had this opinion that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's Mi'raj was physical and he saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now when you have Sayyidah Aisha, for argument's sake, that she did believe that, that is one opinion, and when you have the majority, that is another, well, then what would you do? Then when you have so many on one side, it cannot be denied that Rasulullah's Mi'raj was physical and was whilst he was awake. There is no denying this. Then the Quran in Surah Najm, which mentions the whole waqia of Mi'raj, وَالنَّجْمِ إِذَا حَوَىٰ, etc., etc., and speaks about Rasulullah sallallahu, that did he, when he saw Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in what way, ثُمَّ دَنَا فَتَدَلَّى فَكَانَ قَابَ قَوْسَيْنِ أَوْ أَدْنَى, how close they went, etc., etc., and he saw, and mentioned that ra'a. Now here, what the Wahhabiyya they state, that this was Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, the Quran is speaking about. This is the lack of, when you have source, you feel sorry that this is the level that they have to come down to, that they state that Allah subhanahu in the Quran is speaking about Rasulullah seeing Jibreel, not Allah. For them again, I have Shah Abdul Haq rahmatullahi ta'ala alayhis Madarij al-Nabuwwat here, and this is one point I want to mention to you, that whether this was Jibreel or whether this was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now here, they mention here now that Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam, that if it was Jibreel, why does Allah have to mention in so much beauty and in detail about this one visiting of Jibreel to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? They say why? They say ulama फरमाते हैं कि हुजूर अलैहि सलातु वस्सलाम की खिदमत में, सुबहानल्लाह, हज़रत आदम अलैहि सलाम पर 12 मरतबा नाजिल हुए, हज़रत इद्रीस अलैहि सलाम पर 4 मरतबा, हज़रत नूह अलैहि सलाम पर 50 मरतबा, हज़रत इब्राहीम अलैहि सलाम पर 42 मरतबा, हज़रत मूसा अलैहि सलाम पर 104 मरतबा, हज़रत ईसा अलैहि सलाम पर 10 मरतबा, और हुजूर अलैहि सलातु वस्सलाम की खिदमत में जिब्रील अलैहि सलाम 26,000 मरतबा हाजिर हुए। that when Jibreel alayhi salam, how many times did he visit and how many times did Rasulullah see Jibreel alayhi salam? They mention that Hazrat Adam alayhi salam saw Jibreel alayhi salam 12 times. Hazrat Idris alayhi salam 4 times. Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam 50 times. Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam 42 times. Hazrat Musa alayhi salam 104 times. Hazrat Isa alayhi salam 10 times. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw Jibreel alayhi salam 26,000 times.
Subhanallah.
So when Rasulullah saw Jibreel alayhi salam 26,000 times, why did this one time have to mention the Quran so detailed? Does that make sense? Meaning that when Allah is stating that this summa dana fatadalla faqana qaba qawsayn aw adna, we know the hadith al-Bukhari about the Kitab al-Wahi, that when Rasulullah was given Wahi, what did Jibreel alayhi salam do? He hugged Rasulullah and squeezed. He squeezed Rasulullah. To what extent? It is mentioned that as Jibreel alayhi salam, he had 2 wings. Each wing had 600 wings in there. And each one of them 600 wings was big enough to wrap the whole earth in there. So 600, 1200. And that's how great he was in power. He squeezed Rasulullah to hug him, and Jibreel alayhi salam began to sweat. He hugged him so tight that Jibreel began to sweat, but Rasulullah did not sweat. So look how close they were, squeezed, but the Quran did not mention that. So how could summa dana fatadalla faqana qaba qawsayn refer to Jibreel alayhi salam? Here this qana qaba qawsayn, this refers to Allah and Rasulullah, that summa dana, when Rasulullah came closer, fatadalla, they both came closer. Faqana qaba qawsayn. Qawsayn, it refers to a bow. We have a bow, the bow and arrow. The bow itself, and that time in the Arabs, they used to use, you say ghaz, the yard, and we do this with our shoulders, yeah, our Pakistani Indian people. And then you have, amongst the Arabs used to be the bow, that's how they used to measure things. And here now the Quran states that how close did Allah and His Rasul come? Qawsayn, 2 bows. So 1 bow, 2 bows, aw adna, or even less than that. And here there's no limit how close. But the Mufassirin, right, Imam Razi writes that why Qawsayn was mentioned not for the length, was for 2 things. One, a bow, for example, if that's 1 bow and that's 1 bow, you can place a bow like this and then one like this to measure something. But they say no, it's not like this. They put a bow like this and then like this and then join them together like that. Meaning when Rasulullah went to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah's mercy circulated Rasulullah. That's how close they came. The bows joined, meaning that His mercy, Allah's mercy and rahmah encircled Rasulullah, embraced Rasulullah, His mercy. So this was the closest between Allah and His Rasulullah. So those who use Jibreel as an example, that's not possible. Those who use that this was a dream or spiritual, that is flawed, and the Quran mentions that very clearly. And when here I've also Qazi Yaz has mentioned here the call of Sayyidina Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal radiyallahu anhu, that when they were asked, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, did He give His vision to Rasulullah, did He see Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal said, Ra'ahu, 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 until when? How many times did he say it? Until his breath finished. He said, yes, he did see his Lord, he did see his Lord, he did see his Lord, until his breath finished. This was the aqwal of our iman, their belief. And the Sahaba Ikram's list I mentioned to you, so if somebody believes what Tawsifur Rahman said last week, that if somebody says Rasulullah saw Allah with his physical eyes, he's doing kufr, then how can I see Allah? If that is the case, then what would you say about these Sahaba Ikram, who you have received religion through them? Hence, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave His vision to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and He wanted to show कि और तुमसे क्या गैब निहा हो भला कि जब खुदा ही ना छुपा तुम पे करोड़ों दुरूद. That Ya Rasulullah, what unseen can be hidden from you when Allah did not hide Himself from you. When Allah is the biggest unseen, He showed Himself to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Every unseen was shown to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Therefore, our belief as the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jamaat is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from His creation chose Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as the best of His creation, granted him with the most knowledge, granted him with the unseen. And our belief is that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who gave us the news of the Day of Judgment and beyond, He will be there to support us on the Day of Judgment also. And we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us His closest on the Day of Judgment. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us all for the sake of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this night of Mi'raj also give us the ability to achieve our Mi'raj, which is to be present at the feet of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala fill our hearts with the love of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Anything I have said, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me for any mistake. And now it's time for Maghrib Salah. Wa ma alayna illa al-balagh al-mubin.